Welcome, everybody. Hope you had a good lunch. For those standing over there, feel free to come and sit down. There's definitely seats at the front. We're going to talk about distributed validator technology, DVT. It's a really upcoming technology within the Ethereum staking ecosystem. And today we're joined by a panel of experts to discuss the theme, does DVT level the playing field? That question can be answered in many different ways, so I'm intrigued to see what you've got to say. But first of all, we'll start with Marco. Marco was Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator and project lead for SafeStake, a DVT solution. And then we've got Pablo. It's all about the bees with you. It's a biotech background, serial entrepreneur, now a blockchain and lives in Berlin. And Diva is probably one of the most talked about DVT solutions. It addresses a lot of product features that the ecosystem needs. Then we've got Matty. Is that the best way of introducing you? Matty's the global head of SSV, another very prominent DVT solution. Matty told me just before we came on stage that he checks his validator performance every night before he goes to bed. I mean, everybody has to have a hobby, right? So then we've got Oisín. Oisín's probably got the most experience in staking. What did you say? You've got your 6-year anniversary tomorrow? Yeah. Which is pretty amazing. So while everybody else was buying NFTs, Oisín was on his own talking about staking. But look at you now. Look at this. Yeah. And Obol Labs is another very prominent DVT solution in the space as well. So to keep with the theme, does DVT level the playing field? And to give the audience something to take away, I'd like you all to maybe to start by giving, do you think DVT levels the playing field? And if so, how? Who would like to take it?
I'll start. So I think the short answer is yes, DVT levels the playing field. And the main reason is because it introduces fault tolerance, which means you can have an outage, but your validator stays online. And what's nice about that is it's no longer like a competition of who can get how many nines in their 99.999% uptime. So long as you and your 3 or 5 or 6, however many other node operators all keep something that starts with a 9, like 95% uptime, between you all, so long as you're all not offline, you'll be fine. You can be up and online. So it makes it easier to be a one-man band, to not be on call 24/7, 365. You can have an outage. So long as you don't have outages at the same time as everybody else, you can have perfect uptime. So it really lowers the playing field relative to the professionals.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it too is DVT gives you this really useful primitive, which is the difference between single node and multi-node operation, right? And today, if anybody wants to run a high availability service, and you told me, oh, I'm going to run this great website with just one computer, you will call me crazy. But still, that's what we're doing in a lot of operations. And I think this ability to go multi-node means that things like diversity or things like uptime protection or censorship resistance just go up by often orders of magnitude. So I think it does level the playing field for professionals and stakers in different ways.
I think personally for me, yes, it do, because it actually gives solo staker also the opportunity itself to take part in a validator cluster, which kind of actually level up the field for solo stakers and also professional validators. Everyone can take part in terms of helping with the decentralizations and security of Ethereum as a whole network.
Yeah, I think DVT will play a key role to help bring Ethereum staking back to be more decentralized. I remember last year, Justin J has an interview in the ETH staker community. He expects that the solo staker will grow because they can earn all the staking yield with zero commission. But almost a year passed, we see the institutional client actually eat up a majority of the validator growth, right? Even Coinbase charged 25% commission a fee. The Coinbase staking pool is still the third largest staking pool. So the major reason is institutional client can run a large amount of validator, more efficiency on a cost-effective infrastructure. And DVT can at least empower a solo staker to be benchmarked with the current professional validator at a similar capital efficiency, because with a DVT, solo staker can upgrade to be a distributed validator operator and to accept any third-party delegation. So they don't have to be invest to deposit all the Ether on their own capital.
Okay, so a lot of the time when some of the focus is on solo stakers, I speak to a lot of node operators, and they tell me we don't see an increase in performance with DVT. Ergo, we don't see the point in it. What would be your challenge back to that?
Well, I think professional operators using DVT is a great use case, but it's one of the many applications we can have, right? And in our case, I'll just talk about the models that we work with at Diva, and I'm sure that each of you will have like things to add in your own verticals. But in Diva, I think the strength is we see operators that are professional coming to Diva, we see home stakers coming to Diva, and the power of DVT is that you're mixing these two very different kinds of operators together, and they're able to hold each other up. And what that means is you get the best of each part. You get probably the high resiliency, like the high performance of professional validators who are always there. But if they ever fail for whatever reason, you still have the really strong capture resistance of home stakers.
Do you have any risk of a professional node operator starting 7 different validators in Diva and no one knows it's all the same operator running it in the background?
Yeah, so in Diva, the way a validator works is it's always operated by 16 different operators, and those will be completely random. So what you could end up having is maybe you have 10 of them are professionals in different regions, right? And maybe 6 of them are home stakers. And what Diva does is it requires 2 out of 3 consensus to sign, and that means that whoever is the top performer, that's going to be the end performance of the validator. But if anything would go wrong, or there would be a bug, or there would be any kind of attack, censorship, malfunction, then you're always supported by the rest of your group. So in that sense, you really can get the best of both worlds. And economically, what you can also do is when you have more people, you can bring those 32 ETH that are required down to any number you want, because you can start splitting that, right? So we were running some numbers, and if you look at the people who have 32 ETH and the people who have 1 ETH, there's 12 times more people. And that means that potentially DVT is opening the door to allow more people to start staking and to really realize that blockchain principle.
Yeah, to come back to the performance question for those that are like, oh, you know, I don't need better performance. The thing about a distributed validator is each of the different nodes in the distributed validator has its own execution and consensus layer. And as soon as they have all like signed something, all of the nodes broadcast to the network. And what that impacts is it means that you will get, you know, totally covered around the entire network faster than you would if you were on like one box. And data is still pretty early, but from looking at it, distributed validators have some of the best effectiveness on the network because they cover the whole network very fast because they're broadcast from like 4 different places or 7 different places all almost instantaneously. Whereas if you go from one place, you have to hop along the gossip network to cover the whole thing.
And actually, I think DVT are not only valuable to solo staker, but also to institutional operator. Imagine Ethereum Foundation is discussing to move on the EIP 7251, right?
7251, yep.
Yeah. So
That's max ETH balance for anybody out there.
Yeah. So at that stage, that right now the single node infrastructure just accumulate 32 ETH, right? So when it goes up to 2,000, so the single point failure risks accumulate. So even for some of the institutional operator we are approaching right now, they start to study in DVT to see if it can help to mitigate their single point failure internally. for the infrastructure level. Yeah.
Because a lot of node operators have told me it hasn't made economic sense yet to run DVT.
Yeah, correct. You can, because DVT basically is replace the current solo staking infra with a operator committee comprised by a multiple node that this operator committee will run a kind of fault tolerance consensus protocol on top of it in order to prevent malicious behavior and aggregate the ledger equivalent to the original, right?
And I think last year, I was talking to Oisín, Lisbon Staking Summit, everyone was like, DV what? And no one knew what it was. In this year, it seems like it's a lot more because it's an exciting new technology as well. But I think that there is a slight misunderstanding that DVT is a technology that can enable lots of other things and lots of other patterns as well. So I know that Pablo, you wanted to talk about that in terms of what DVT could enable in the future as well.
Yeah, so one way I explain it often to people is if you have 10 shops and each shop is manned by one person, when that person is sick, that shop is closed. But if instead you have a shop where you have 10 people and some of those are sick or are off for whatever reason constantly, that shop is still open. And that's a really simple primitive, right? That is the shop that's always open, even if people are intermittently on or off. But I think it's such a powerful concept, and that's why more and more people are talking about it. But I think we're going through this adoption curve of now we understand the value. Now everybody's starting to think, how do I use this in my operations? How do I incorporate it to my protocols? And I think the end of this is that it becomes ubiquitous, like the electric motor, right? Back in the day, you would have these ads. The new electric motor, here's what you can use it for. You can cook, you can use your car. But now, we just don't talk about it because now we talk about mixers and cars and scooters, whatever. So I think DVT, probably in the next cycles, it will be like, why are you not using it? So I think we're going through this education curve, discovering what those benefits are, and that's going to be really obvious within the next year, I think.
Yep, okay. And I suppose a protocol like Rocket Pool has shown that there's a lot of appetite for node operators out there. Do you think DVT is a game-changing enough that you'll grow more market share than, say, a Rocket Pool? Do you think that's possible with DVT?
Well, I think it enables a lot of new things. One could be inclusion, right? A lot of people today want to validate, and they're priced out. So DVT could be used to lower that barrier. Another thing, it could be you're afraid of things like slashing or downtime. And if you remove that fear, and you can show that a lot of people are using it without having any issues, that will also bring a lot more people in. So in the end, I think you really need to look into what's stopping people from adopting something, and to the extent that DVT helps, I think it will encourage more adoption.
I think you were telling me about a friend in a group of guys in Colombia that bought some ETH together and hardware together as well. Mm-hmm. And they were planning to have one validator each on, so 4 validators on one machine because that was what they could afford.
Yeah, it was a group of friends, and they were like, we got together and we put our ETH in one validator, and we're going to split it at some point. And I'm like, that's what protocols are for. So I'm glad that finally we have the primitives for this, and excited to see how people use it.
Coming back on that point of can distributed validators be used for something like Rocket Pool, I think Rocket Pool itself can actually adopt distributed validators, and people are doing kind of good work making like prototypes that have been running on testnet for probably a year at this point, like within mini pools. But one thing that I think is kind of hot at the moment is these collateralized liquid staking protocols are in kind of an arms race for who can like risk the lowest bond. And I think the validator itself, minimum needs 1 ETH for the first penalty and probably another ETH for kind of the extra if there's a bigger slashing. You can subdivide that amongst people and say, yeah, if 8 of you are running a validator, you all put up a quarter of an ETH each, and that still gets to your tier 2. So a lot of these liquid staking protocols that are collateralized are being like, how do we go further? How do we make this cheaper while still being protected, still keeping our collateralization? And DVT really helps that.
Mm-hmm. And what about DVT hardware versus cloud? Because this is something that we all spoke about previously in terms of costs, because I think there's lots of validators running on the cloud at the moment. And this is something that no one really talks about in terms of validators could be run on bare metal. and it could save, you probably know the figures better than me.
Yeah, this is the one I love to talk about. So even in that last panel, the guys were talking about like what are some of the like worst habits people do, and they talk about having two machines where they have the full private key on both, and if the first one dies, they're like, quick, spin up the other one. This is not worth the risk. It is, double signing is more or less, every slashing to date has been a double signing, and it almost always happens doing this way, either intentionally or by accident. With running in the cloud or versus running on bare metal, a lot of, particularly the enterprises, run on the cloud because if their machine does die, if it was a bare metal machine, there's very little they can do. They just have to wait for it to come back, or they have to like plug it out. But on the cloud, they can detach the disk and like put the disk somewhere else, and they're like, cool, I can fail over a cloud machine. But they're only really doing that because they can't go to bare metal, because they can't get in touch with the machine. If you have a distributed validator, and each of your bare metal machines only has a piece of the key, A, if one dies, no problem, your validator is still online. But B, even if you want to, you can bring up a replacement node, and even if the two nodes come back and you have like two copies, but each with just a partial, that just looks like a misbehaving DV node, and all of the distributed validators, they're Byzantine fault tolerant, meaning they can put up with that, and they just like complain that one node is in two places, but the validator doesn't go offline, you don't like double sign or anything of the sort. So a lot of node operators can massively reduce their operating costs by going from cloud to bare metal, and the rule of thumb I tell people is it's about an 80% reduction in operating costs to swap.
That's a huge saving, though. Okay.
Yeah, actually comparing with optimizing validator on Crown, we are more focused on bring validator off the Crown. No matter how on Crown is still expensive, and it's not help for decentralization in the long run, right? So, and besides that, I do also remember Mike from EF just write a long article to propose a Oisín multi-sig protocol lately. So with the help of the DVT, actually, I don't think this kind of Oisín protocol is necessary. So, for example, in SafeStake use case, we leverage the DVT and the distributed key generation protocol to introduce a new role called initiator that to require the initiator to pre-stake for ETH to activate a mini pool validator process. So imagine SafeStake is just like a Rocket Pool plus DVT. So this 4 ETH will bearing all the selection penalty risks, and the rest 28 ETH pair from the LST pool on top of the DVT info is actually running risk-free staking. Mm-hmm. So this is a kind of two-tier staking proposed by my article, right? So, in such a scenario, we don't need any change on the protocol level, right? So it gives more flexibility to the current staking ecosystem participant to choose it flexible. Yeah.
Okay, and then going back to the theme of leveling the playing field, this is a question from somebody on Twitter, so thank you, whoever it was. You've got the initial cost of hardware and the reduced bond of 1 ETH. How does that ever make it worth entering the market from an economical sense with DVT?
Yeah, there's a real question of, is it worth validating with 1 ETH? I would say at the current price, it's only worth it for maybe idealistic values. But I think a lot of us are here because we think that it will not keep their current price. But I would say, if you think about having a home machine for $500, let's say like an Apple TV, it starts to make sense once you have 2 or 3 ETH. If you have more, then it can be like your little home investment. And I think the way that we realize that decentralization dream from Ethereum is once it's low cost, it's simple enough, where people are not priced out technically and everybody can run something home, Because if those nodes are participating in a larger network, in a consensus where professionals and home stakers alike are bringing each other up, then we have managed to increase by orders of magnitude the resilience of Ethereum. So I would say it's probably early, but I think we're going to see a lot more value in home staking soon.
I'd probably like to add to that we see a huge amount of delegation in ETH staking, whether we kind of design for it or not. The vast majority of ETH is delegated in some manner. People want to like kind of offload to other people. Ethereum, the network, wants to have kind of home stakers and people kind of like not running kind of in big enterprises. And I think DVT is the big thing that makes that more possible, because you couldn't really give just one single entity millions of dollars and be like, please don't mess it up, unless they're, you know, an accredited enterprise with kind of, you know, runway and stuff. You can't really give it to a home staker. But if there's a group of 7 or 10 of them, like in EtherFi Operation Solo Staker, they pick kind of 10 solo stakers and give them allocation. That's kind of where I hope to see this like market mature, not into the, we all put it into one big liquid staking protocol, but instead someone's like, you know, I have $50 million I want to stake. I will pick kind of 10 community members and people I know. I will stake to them. And if they are all getting, you know, 2% of the rewards or something, at 100 validators, that works out at about $5,000 a year at current prices. And that, for a lot of people, will put them through college, is kind of my worldview. I think of it as, there's a lot of like teenagers that are really into crypto, would love to like run nodes, but they don't have 32 ETH.
I think EtherFi had 700 applications in the first 2 hours. They put out Operation Solo Staker. And for anybody that's unaware, they had a, they supplied you with a node, they supplied you with the ETH, and then from the rewards, you would pay the node off over a 3-year period, which is a super way to grow nodes and shows you the appetite to run a node.
For sure. And I often, my dream is to get all these like technical young people that can run nodes but just don't have the capital, to be able to trust them with, you know, somebody else's capital using DVT. And if you can make that work, things like Operation Solo Staker, things like Lido Simple DVT, they can make a decent living, particularly in like kind of other parts of the world where it's not stupid expensive. And my goal is to like, I don't know, put a kid through college because they have a validator.
I'm going to put it in a different direction this way, is that I think everyone here know that, you know, DVT allow validators to be run by multiple operators collaboratively. So when we talk about layering fields and all this stuff, we are also kind of talk about how we can actually have a cluster of combinations. Professional validators, solo stakers, mid-size, and all this stuff. It gives us the flexibility to do that. That also kind of tells us that, you know, in the, you know, it actually gives more opportunity, I feel, right? So that also in a DVT setup and all this stuff, it allows like a hardware to be able to manage more key shares that he is not able to do so right now in a standard validator setup without DVT. All right. So quick example will be like for example in SSV implementations itself. So what we see things is that for us, we realize that it doesn't really make sense in terms of doesn't really make sense in terms of every time when a cluster, there's a new cluster and all this itself, then you have to spin out a new nodes and all this itself, right? So what we do is that that's also one of the reasons that we implement it as a DVT network. So it kind of allows that every operator enable them to have the capability to actually operate multiple clusters with just a single node. Right? So if you can operate multiple clusters with just a single nodes and all this stuff, that also means that in terms of the hardware cost, in terms of the resources that you need, and if you're an operator itself, if someone, maybe some solo, you have a good performance and all this stuff, right? Someone chooses you to be part of the cluster, that's also one source of revenue to kind of cover the hardware cost. And when you can actually operate in multiple clusters and all this stuff, things just set up to actually cover in terms of the hardware and the resources side of things.
Yeah, I think most of the individual decision is profit-driven, right? When you raise the question, then the current hardware costs outweigh the reward. Is because there's no right tooling for solo staker to earn high yield at this moment. They use the machine and they can only invest by their own capital. One validator need to deposit 32 ETH. Now is more than 50K US dollar. So the staking yield is minimal. So, but with DVT, solo staker can upgrade to be a distributed validator operator, and then to join the network, he can use the same hardware investment to accept any third-party validator dedication. So imagine no matter he can use the same hardware to run 50 validator, 100 validator is doable. So he can earn back the hardware investment within 1 or 2 months.
If they have the 32 ETH already, yeah.
Yeah.
And are you seeing many solo stakers being converted to DVT? Because they're usually quite a hardcore bunch that don't want any smart contract risk.
I think we see a huge amount of solo staker interest, particularly because there's a lot of solo stakers that would love to solo stake but don't have 32 ETH. So
Yep.
they're like, they have their eyes on getting into like a rocket pool, mini pool, or every time a new LSP comes out with like a lower bond, they're like, I can attain that, I can like get to that. But even I think the lowest might be 2 ETH, which is $3,000. If you're, you know, a young person, most of the world, that is almost a year's wages and stuff. So I think, yeah, I'm actually not so sure about like collateralization being the kind of be all and end all. I think having groups of operators that you can trust allows you to kind of take risk in these people that don't have the capital to do this, but do have the technical ability. And I think we should be trying as much as possible to encourage these people that know how to run nodes, but, you know, don't have thousands of dollars laying around to kind of put up as bond. So yeah, I think there's a lot of solo stakers that see DVT as their way into staking.
Yep.
Yeah. And I also think what we call solo stakers today are probably the early adopters. And I think we would have a lot more if all the barriers to entry were lower. And part of that is cheaper equipment. Part of that is lighter clients that need cheaper equipment, easier setups, lower requirements. And I think the mix of all that has the potential to really 10x solo staking.
I kind of want to add the use cases as well. It's like solo stakers and all that. I'm a solo staker, so some of my friends and all
Are you going
that
to
stuff.
convert?
Sorry?
Are you going to become a DVT staker instead?
Maybe. I will. So some of my friends running on machines that's lower specs. So when it's lower specs and all this itself, we tend to need to purge the memory almost every day, purge the memories of the device and all this itself. So I think one of the use cases that we talk about DVT itself is to make sure, you know, everyone has been talking about fault tolerance, resilience, and all this itself. But let's say, for example, I have a low spec machine and I'm traveling everywhere. So every day I need to purge the memory to make sure that it keep up with the performance. Then I will not be able to kind of install an additional VM layer on top of the device because it will actually bring down the performance, it will bring up the latency and all this stuff. So the only way I can do this stuff is to, hey, we should just use DVT, right? So I find like 3 friends or even a combination of professional validators and all this stuff. I myself as one of the operator managing my keys and all this stuff. If times that I need to travel and all this stuff, I can solely depend on the other 3 itself or even the other 5 itself to make sure that I have the necessary fault tolerance and resiliency to keep the validator going, right?
Yep.
I can't be like remotely connecting into the devices, purge the memory every day I sleep and all this stuff. It's not going to work. But with DVT right now, it kind of opened up a more wider audience and also solo stakers as well.
We're down to our last 50 seconds, so I just want to ask one more question. In the next 6 months, how do you see DVT changing the staking landscape? Which area is it going to affect the quickest?
Solo stakers.
Solo stakers, okay.
Liquid staking pools, I think they have the biggest incentive to have a diverse operator set, so I think they'll adopt it probably fastest.
I would say permissionless liquid staking pools, especially because today we see liquid staking can work quite well, but with DVT, you have so many new security models that are possible that we're working on this because we believe it's really going to be a major change.
Great. I think it'll be really exciting over the next 6-12 months.
I think for my site itself, I will probably, because we are very developer focused, so I think there will be a long tail of like applications, services, and all this itself. I believe security supersedes returns. Security and risk supersede returns. That's my belief.
Okay, great. Thanks very much to our experts of DVT. And that's it.
Thank you so much.